think it's time to call the meeting to order, so if you can kind of take our seats, settle in. I appreciate that. We have a large crowd, so when it's your turn to speak, you are going to have to stand up and speak loud enough so we all can hear. Zoom is on, so we're trying to make that work and people.
Well, let's go to the front of the room. There's a microphone in the center of the table.
Okay, thanks, Tim. All right, let's stand and do the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to make a motion to open the meeting. Steve made a motion, second motion. Jack, all those in favor? Aye. Make sure that everybody signed in when you came, so we have an idea of, who is here. I'm going to read the notice that was in the paper, and then we'll move forward from there. Notice of the public hearing. Notice to hereby is given that the town board of the town of Hague will hold a public hearing on the 26th day of May, 2021 at 7 o'clock at the Hague Community Center, 9783 Graphite Mountain Road, Hague, New York, to hear all interested persons for or against the adoption of the proposed short-term rental ordinance regulating short-term rentals in the town of Hague. A copy of the proposed ordinance may be obtained at the community center during regular business hours. And if I was kind of stuttering a little, the print is very small, so it was a little hard to hear what was there. So, okay, we'd just like to set a few guidelines. I'm going to kind of limit your conversation. I'll give you 3 minutes to speak. When you're called upon, I'd like to stand and announce who you are so we know who we're talking to. And I would ask for the audience to be kind of as quiet as they can because it is a large room. The acoustics are not as great as they should be. So I guess those are just a couple of things we need to set in motion. And I'm going to start with turning it over. Well, first, I'd like to introduce everybody that's here. I'm Edna Frazier, the supervisor. Steve Vermont, he's deputy supervisor. John Silvestri, our attorney. Jack Bass, a board member, and Josh Pack, another board member. And Marty Fitzgerald is the other one, and he's not here tonight. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve. I'd like for him to give us an overview. This kind of was his project. He spent hours and hours on it, so I think it would be good for him to just fill it in as to how it came about and what we're looking at.
Well, good evening, folks. We're glad to have you all here, and we're glad to have the people up on Zoom, and we appreciate everybody coming out. We've put this together, and obviously we've got some ways to massage it possibly down the road, and we're glad you're here to have your input. It's all being recorded, so we can, after the meeting, we can look back on it and we can get your comments and say, okay, we got a comment from Frank, or we got a comment from somebody else in the audience. So we can, has been started and it's been moving forward with Warren County. And I have just a copy here of the Hague Chronicle, an issue, and it says Warren County reminds owners of short-term rental properties offered through Airbnb, blah, 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 and similar platforms they are required to register with the county treasurer. The county treasurer said it's mailing letters to short-term rentals to make sure of their obligations. And again, it's the next way, next step toward ensuring equitable treatment between short-term rental and traditional rental properties on property tax. And the thing is too that we would like to do, and we've talked about this many times in our meetings, and we want to ensure the tranquility of the town. We don't want to have large disturbances in the town. We want to make sure that there are guidelines, and for people who do rent, there's protocols to follow. And we just want to make sure that Hague stays the nice town that it is, the friendly town that it is. And we're not here to put a wrench in anybody's rental. We just would like them to follow guidelines. There's a whole raft of laws that are on the books, and John is our attorney here and knows them very well also. And so we just want to go forward and set a good tone for this. And again, I don't believe that we're going to put this into effect tomorrow. It's going to come down the road, and I'm probably we're we're probably looking right at probably next year, because again, we can't put something together and say, okay, now you've got to do it. You've already got people coming up and it's short term. It's not enough time to be able to decipher it and move forward. So basically, I think that's a little synopsis. Hopefully you understand it. And obviously, if you didn't have any questions, you wouldn't be here. If you wanted more understanding, you wouldn't be here. You're all here. Let's hope we have a nice meeting tonight. We can answer some questions and listen to your input, and we can adjust and massage things going forward. Thank you.
I open the meeting. Yeah, I need a motion to open the public hearing. Thank you, Josh. A second to that?
Second.
Jack, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, with that, then we'll proceed to the public hearing. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand. Like I say, stand, speak loudly, and try to limit it to 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to respond to this proposed ordinance. A little background. My name is Peter Mitchell. I'm a co-owner along with my brother Tucker Mitchell and my sister Ann Mitchell Thompson. And we co-own one parcel in Oneida Bay and Huron Bay. We were lucky enough, my siblings and I were, my parents scraped and saved to buy this particular waterfront property in 1953. So it's been in the family a long time. The parcel has always had 2 houses on it, even though it's only 1.15 acre. The first house was built in 1906, and the second house was built in the 1920s. And we've been renting either one or both of the houses for nearly 70 years. Okay, why are we all here? We can all agree the overall objective is public health, safety, and welfare. But when I read the proposed ordinance, and I read the whole thing, but it wasn't, I didn't even get past the first sentence, and I realized that apparently I'm the enemy. I had no idea, but we live and learn.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What did you say?
I didn't realize that as a homeowner rents that house out. Apparently, I'm the enemy. I had to pick myself off the floor many times when I was reading this ordinance. And, I mean, that's putting it mildly.
Okay.
Okay, so the first article, the first sentence says the town board has determined, we can get into later how you determine that, but that short-term transient residential renters are basically the root of Hague's problems. I have to take argument with that right from the get-go. Somehow this ordinance doesn't address any of the other sources of disruptions to the neighborhoods. I mean, they don't talk about beach associations, you don't talk about guest lodges, you don't talk about yacht clubs, and in particular, you don't talk about homeowners who don't rent. Let's face it, we all know some homeowners that aren't exactly the most considerate, but this doesn't address that at all. Rather, it focuses on the dastardly transient renters. Now, this word, quite frankly, has nothing to do with my renters, and I've talked to a lot of other people who rent their homes. Most of my renters have been coming for 5 years, 10 years. The Hofstetters, who used to own a house in Arcady, they rented for us for 15 years. And another family's been renting for 20 years. It's tradition, and their grandparents came to Lake George. They love it. The parents came in turn, and now the grandkids have an opportunity to appreciate Lake George. And all of these renters, they come and they tell me, you know, your home is like our home away from home. They love it, they respect it, they take care of it as if it was theirs. And to call them transients, it's so inappropriate, I can't get over it. Occasionally, you get a bad tenant. No matter how many times you get references, there's always one that kind of sneaks through. And when I get feedback, I immediately address it with them. I knock on the door and say, hey, you got to cut this stuff out. You know, having parties go on to wee hours in the morning, and it just ain't going to fly. And if you don't correct the problem, you're not going to be able to come back, period. There's no ordinance necessary. It's simply I address the problem, and if they don't correct their ways, well, they're out. But the vast majority of my tenants love the place and they behave themselves. Well, let's just step back for a second. Why am my siblings and I renting the property? You know, if we had the finances to pay the crazy taxes around here, I probably wouldn't rent. But I'm afraid that myself and my siblings, we're retired now on a fixed income, and we simply don't have that kind of finances to pay the taxes. Currently, just for one parcel, our waterfront property has school taxes of about 17,000 plus, and local Hague county tax another 7,500. So we're talking combined $25,000. The security check doesn't cover that. I'll tell you right now. So we rent, and the problem is there are plenty of people on Lake George, particularly ones that have bought in the last 10 or 15 years, who have considerable wealth. And apparently they don't like the taxes, but it's no big deal. They got plenty of money. They have the money to spend. We simply don't. We have to rent out in order to make it work. So just to sum it up, I know I only have 3 minutes, but the town has kind of created this problem in the first place with the inequitable tax situation. And now you're telling us that we can't, you're going to severely restrict our renting rights, which will inevitably force us to sell our property. I mean, I don't see how, if you tell me I can't get that rent and income that I need, that's the bottom line. So who's going to buy the property? Probably some super rich person from out of town who could care less about, hey, community values. So I would strongly ask you to reconsider this ordinance. I know it sounded good initially, looked good on paper, but it's just heavy-handed and too intrusive. And I think we can find a more common sense way to make sure renters.
Thank you, sir. Next person? Yes. Oh, did he have a
Yeah,
question?
can I just address one thing, Pete? I appreciate what you brought out and you brought some valid points, but I just want to let everybody know here that when you're talking about taxes in the town of Hague, the taxes are the school taxes that have been in existence for quite some time, and the rest of the taxes are Warren County taxes. For the folks in the audience, we are the only town in the Adirondack Park that does not have a town tax. So again, the taxes go to Warren County and they go to Ticonderoga School.
The town of Hague, though, they did decide that they were going to join the Ticonderoga School District. And unfortunately, these kind of decisions have ramifications.
Right, well, I'm sure it did, but again, we are the only town, where you said town tax or Hague taxes. We do not have a town tax.
Sure, come right up this way. I think they can maybe hear you better. Your name.
I have off and on lived in the town of Hague since 1968. So, over here. Oh, there's this. Gotcha. So in any case, I want to thank Pete for pointing out one of the obvious reactions that I had, and I think a lot of people had with the opening preamble of this. It really comes across as, you know, renters are posing a public health and safety issue for the town of Hague. And, you know, I really have never seen that in my life. My family and I own a home in Silver Bay. We do rent it occasionally to help defer some of the maintenance and carrying costs of that property. We've been doing that for a couple of years. I can say our experience has always been very good. You know, and I think it bears asking if this is the right tool or the right remedy. If there is an issue with noise, for instance, I think everyone can agree that if you have noisy people next door, it's a function of the people. It's not a function of someone classified as a renter or a homeowner. It's the person or people. So, to imply that the rental population is disproportionately causing rural residents or the town, I don't inherently feel that's backed up by any fact, and if it is, I would love the town to provide some of those facts. And if there is an ordinance that needs to go into effect, to specifically target the issues that we're trying to solve. So with that, I presume this information isn't available tonight, but I would like to know in 2020, how many official complaints for noise were lodged with the town or the county if they called the sheriff. How many complaints of septic systems leaching into the lake or failing septic systems were lodged? And then out of that, what is the subset that occurred while renters were at those properties? Having lived here as long as I have, and certainly not naming names, I have a list off the top of my head of septic systems that have failed due to family usage. Families packing in friends and relatives and family members through growing extended families into homes where the emergency garage or sanitary truck is on site dealing with those issues. So again, this is this feels like we're trying to put in a wall hanger with a sledgehammer. And I think that the issues of noise and septic and public health and safety are of paramount concern. But let's identify what those are and let's use tools at the town's disposal that are reasonable and that are targeted to hit those particular concerns. This is the sledgehammer. And this, in addition to the impact it has on the homeowners, is going to have an impact on the town. I know very well that the zoning administrator for the town, unless something has changed very recently, for a number of years has been a part-time position, and that's been an inadequate number of hours simply to deal with the zoning and compliance concerns of the town. This year, rough gut is another half to full FTE, or at least a full FTE during certain parts of the year. So there's going to be a real cost implication of trying to manage this. And not only the effort to manage it, it's not going to go easy. That there's going to be people who are going to push back. So I guess I just want to say, let's focus on the real issues. Let's focus on solving what the true problems are. But reading through all of these pages, and I read every word, there's no specificity as to what the problem is. And I think that's sorely lacking. So, thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Anybody have any question they want to ask of Steve? I just want to make sure they did. Nope. All right, someone else from the audience that would like to speak? Yes.
Wanted to ask first, if you have questions, or we save them for later.
If you have a question now, ask the question.
I was just going
And
to
your name, please.
speak my piece here. My name is Frank Burkle, and I have a property down Silver Bay, right next to the campus. My only neighbor is actually through the woods. The rest of me is surrounded by Silver Bay. I want to say just a little bit to identify myself, because there are other people like me, like Peter, similar, and so forth. But then I have a couple of general things. And one is, I'm a Middlebury resident, but we bought this property 26 years ago, and it has 3 cottages on one premise. We couldn't have made it with 2. I mean, now maybe I could, but as I paid down the mortgage, but we couldn't have. And it's been a glorious experience. We've been stewards of the lake. We rebuilt voluntarily all our septic, have no washing machines, no chemicals, and whatever. And I'm bragging a little bit, but we're, I think, the kind of people that this community wants. We've got the same renters for years and years. I have renters that have been 15, 20 years, but I also have renters who came before I owned it, because this has been the same property with 3 cottages since 1951. So I have renters that have been here for 50 years and And they're wonderful renters, they're quiet, there's no parking situation problem, there's no noise problem, they bring money to the area. They certainly aren't the villains that, you know, we're talking about. The one thing on the premise, the wording on that is confusing. I have one premise, but I have 3 cottages. I'm not sure how that works. It's an indivisible thing like Peter's. I mean, I can't subdivide it or anything like that. I'm a resident landlord. I have a little room and bath that's part of the workshop. I'm there all the time, constantly with my renters. I've never had one bad renter because I screen them. They got to be Silver Bay types, you know, they got to be quiet people, not jet skis, no offense to anybody, but and loud music people. And not one boombox has ever been put on a deck. So that's the character of the place. And I'm pleading for the same thing. If you take my rentability away, I have to leave. And the only person that's going to buy my property is a rich family from New York. They're going to tear down my 1950s rustic cottages and they're going to put up a McMansion and they're going to put chemicals on the lawn. And that's a fact. So I feel like, you know, I'm a better resident. And the other thing that you've already said, Steve, insightfully, is that there's no way that this could happen this year. We've been collecting money since the end of last year and whatever. I do want to qualify just in defense of the concepts. We all know, and I think a lot of this must come out of Lake George Village. The absentee landlord and VRBOs in Lake George Village create havoc. There are people that move out of town because their street has 4 houses that are parties all summer long. So the noise thing and whatever is a problem. I just don't think Hague is that problem, certainly with renters. But as far as Warren County taxes, I've been waiting for this to happen. I'm shocked that it hasn't happened years ago. You know, a place like Florida, or Steve, you have played like I do. They'll come after you with a pickaxe if you don't submit the taxes. So I know that's going to happen. I think it's good for the county. You know, we're going to pass it on to our renters. The question I had before I done is the 30-day thing. The definition of a short-term renter is less than 30 days. So if this went through with one house, blah, 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 my only hope of survival might be to somehow find long-term renters that don't fall in the short-term character, and then I wouldn't be subject to all the same problems. So is that what that means? Short-term renters under 30 days by definition? It seems to say.
Well, you raised a good point about, you know, if you take a short-term rental, or you convert it, if we have to massage it, you know, possibly into a longer-term thing. These are the things that we want to listen to you all bring up tonight. And again, we're not going to commit to any tonight because again, we have time to work this over. Just like we talked on the telephone, we want to look at it and try and do the right thing for the town.
And maybe long-term becomes 2 weeks and over or something like that, but some way to save people like us who bring a lot of money and good people to the area. And Steve's always been so solicitous. I'll never forget you for the program where you went around and put that on all the boats that when they started the ramp thing.
Can I just ask you one question? Do you happen to know what zoning district you're in? You don't know whether you're TR1 or?
He's an HS.
He's an HS.
Yeah, and you know, people like me, we bought the property based on the history of the property for 40 years. It was a rental property. It was sold to me as one, and to change that, I just always assumed I'd be grandfathered into that. I mean, because it's kind of a bait and switch if I'm not.
Peter,
Thanks very much.
if you don't mind, Peter, do you know what zoning district you're in?
I'd have to check it.
You don't know?
It's
Okay.
on the same bay.
Okay.
We only have a couple of people that rent on our bay, I think.
Okay.
On Ida Bay.
All right, thank you, Frank. Next person? Yes, way in the back. Do you want me to come up front?
Yes, please.
Yes, please.
It seems to be a little confusion, but I just want to know if tonight, it may not be, if it is passed, that it will not be effective until next year.
Well, I can tell you we're not voting on this tonight, and
But you can't assure us that?
well, The way we've been looking at it, we figured it would be January 1st, 2022 before it could go.
Can you give us that assurance?
Well, I feel that way. I believe the rest of the board is on the same page with that, but we wanted to get your input.
Well, I'm sure that
Originally,
everybody
I know
here
it looked like we were
is,
going to try to implement it this year.
And I'm sorry, I'm Lori Sappinoff, and I had sent you an email,
Yes, you did.
but that's my major concern. I do have other concerns, but right now, and I would hope that we could get a commitment that if it does pass.
Well, like I said, we're not taking a vote on anything tonight. So.
Well, I'm not asking that, I'm asking for
Well,
just
right,
a,
but when you're saying if it does pass, it can't pass unless we're voting on it, and we're not voting on it because we're looking at getting your input, seeing the changes that we need to make, and if it does go into effect, it would be next year before.
so it would be. So you,
Yes.
so you are giving that, okay, fine, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, next person. In the back. Yes.
Sandy?
Hi.
Sandra Rust, Overbrook Road, Hague. We have owned our property and renting our home for 20 years. My husband's family's been coming to Lake George for almost 100 years. So we definitely have a vested interest. And I want to thank Mr. Mitchell for his comment because I have to say I was flabbergasted, jaw dropped when I read the first statement of this ordinance that makes renters and people who rent their homes seem like they are the enemy of Hague. I'll read what I wrote. I've read this document numerous times, and each time I do, I feel the same sense of frustration and total negativity at the total negativity expressed in the first two sentences. Having hosted renters for over 20 years now, to read that the town board thinks that our guests conceivably pose a threat to the health, well-being, and safety of the town of Hague is discouraging and demoralizing, to say the least. We have never had a guest pose a threat to the town of Hague, and in fact, many of our guests have gone on to become great friends, including several that have enjoyed Hague so much that they have purchased homes. It is perplexing that the proposed STR ordinance would regulate their behavior as renters, but not as private homeowners. In what way does short-term rentals pose a threat to the public health, safety, and well-being within the town any more than anybody in an owner-occupied home? I think that you said it's people. It's people. It's not a renter. It's not a homeowner. It's people. The town actually, with the laws that we have in our town or ordinances, the town has little ability to control, but want to impose a new set of rules and regulations on a small subset of Hague's population. Actually, does the town have an idea of how many homes in Hague are rented on a seasonal basis? I looked at the comprehensive plan. I think there's, if I read it correctly, there's 1,200, something like 1,200 homes in Hague. I'd like to know how many of them are rented on a seasonal basis. And again, I also asked, what was the genesis of this? Has there been an inordinate number of complaints about renters? In regard to the health, well-being, and safety of the citizens of Hague, several years ago, more than a few citizens came before the board numerous times with concerns about their well-being in terms of noise. The citizens of Hague voted, and that vote determined that the majority were not in favor of any rules and regulations regarding a crucial aspect of well-being, which is noise. So I'm not sure how the board feels justified in regulating the small number of homes rented out for a few months in the summer, when the threat, if that's the case, can just as easily come from owner-occupied homes, and in many cases does. And that's just going into a few things and a few of the details in it. The ordinance states no fireworks, but we don't allow fireworks in our property. I'm not a fireworks person, except the Hague ones, which are great. So I guess according to the ordinance, action can be taken against a rental home that uses fireworks, but where is the restriction in the town code about anybody else having fireworks at a private home? The ordinance states no garbage receptacles visible from the street. Do we have something in our town code about anybody's home that can't have receptacles visible from the street? Renters conducting themselves in a, quote, in accordance for proper consideration of their neighbors and act peaceably. Again, is the same behavior required of owner-occupied homes? Lastly, quote, the operation and appearance of an STR shall not interfere with the residential character of the premises, including the surrounding properties or the neighborhood. I would argue that most short-term rental properties go above and beyond in creating a well-maintained and attractive property. That's why they're able to rent those properties. This sadly of the homes in Hague. Obviously, the town wishes to have compliance with the newly imposed Warren County occupancy tax. Again, I'm surprised it took this long. We knew that that was coming. How does the town plan on ensuring that rental homeowners are going to comply with Warren County? How do they plan on ensuring that all STR owners will apply for their permit? Is it going to be something, are we going to have neighbors turning in neighbors? I mean, how are you going to go about finding these properties other than appealing to the honesty of people, which hopefully that is what we would have. We already have our permit with Warren County. We've already paid our first tax. So again, I think, like somebody said, it's kind of like a sledgehammer. It just I think it takes something that's, we're not even sure the size of this problem. And again, enforcement too. I mean, I think we can see what's happening in so many aspects of our town, that our town is stretched thin with the people who are trying to do the best jobs possible. Our boards have been shrunk from 7 members to 5 members. Our zoning enforcement is a part-time job, and it's a new person who's not necessarily familiar with the town. So I think that there's a lot of challenges ahead before this becomes something that would be enacted for the town. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Yes, the gentleman that's behind Steve, okay.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Smith, homeowner on Friends Point, and I've gone through, like many of you, in detail the ordinance, made notes, shared them with the board already. I'm up here more for you to hear this, because the board's already hopefully read my. Many of you have made broad statements that are very well founded. My sister and I went through the ordinance point by point, saying there's several things, such as Article 6A, the verb to be, been, means that any owner, past or present, has to be named in your application, not just the current owner of the property. So that's just one example of a typo creating ambiguity or frankly, bad rule. Article 7K, the town board can make a change to the ordinance without a public hearing. Article 7K and 10 say notice will be in the town newspaper or official paper. What is that? The Hague Chronicle? I mean, many people just by happenstance found out about this hearing. Article 8D, the offenses are all listed as first offenses. And Article 8G, the daily cumulative nature of the penalties seems excessive. If you have a violation and you don't fix it within 3 days or whatever, you're getting the same fine for your third offense by the 3rd day, all adding up. And then the ordinance should only apply to somebody who's under a rental agreement, not to the owners who are actually on site, because if you read the fireworks rule, it would make a homeowner not allowed to have fireworks, just because they happen to rent the property at another time of the year. And then also, how are the monies collected for the ordinance, $300 being used in the county, or pardon me, the town budget? And some of you, if you went out looking, you may have realized that Warrensburg has introduced a similar ordinance back in 2019. Town of Bolton this spring had a public hearing. All three ordinances are basically the same language, just reworked by the different towns. Why is Hague following that lead? I'm not sure. Again, I think it's overkill for what we would need, which is trying to collect the tax money for the county. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, someone else in the audience? Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, yes.
Real quickly, I wanted to just reiterate a little bit of what others have said. And my biggest concern is when we purchased our house over 25 years ago, we never had any intentions of renting. We came up here, we liked the lake, we wanted to be here, part of the community. Circumstances change, and we, and I think like others, were renting to pay our taxes. I know that it's not the town of Hague, but the point is, we here in Hague are paying tremendous amount in taxes. And that's all I'm renting for. I rent for my 4 weeks, I get my taxes, and then I enjoy the rest of the time. So it's not like I'm renting for a profit. And the same with the fees for I have to register and pay the taxes to the county. I understand that, but now I have to register with the town of Hague and pay a fee for that. I have to register with the fire department and pay a fee for that. I feel like I'm being nickeled and dimed, and that's the whole reason I'm renting. So it's only snowballing and making a stronger reason for me to have to continue renting. When we started renting, we have learned quite a bit. And yes, we did have the bad experience with the families that made a lot of noise, were up all nights of the hours and affected the neighbors. Not only am I getting the negative feeling with this ordinance and from the town in general, I have tremendous problems with my neighborhood. They are all very upset that we are renting. So I am being ostracized in the neighborhood as well. And again, I'm not doing this because I want to do it. It's something that I have to do if I want to continue to live here in Hague. So we have learned through our experiences, as someone else had said, we screen our families tremendously. I cannot tell you how many people we turn away. We will only take families with children, knowing there will be a quiet time. We also are in the area, so we follow and keep an eye on them. And again, haven't had to do it recently, but if we had to stop them from doing things, we would. As someone else said, I'm charging a lot of money for this house. If I were spending that money and getting a house, I want to make sure it's in tip-top shape. So my home and my yards and my grounds are well maintained in order to keep the quality of people that we want coming to rent. And that is all I wanted to say.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Cindy.
Thank you, I understand that position. Yes, in the back.
Hi, I'm EJ. I think some of you know me. I've been around for a while, unfortunately. I'm happily married. My wife Cindy, who did mention that we make no revenue at all out of this. It's all for tax money, period. The good news is this group represents probably $2 to $3 or $4 million of revenue for Hague businesses from our renters who come in and pay money. I know in my own case, our 3 to 5 families that rent every year are paying well over $5,000 in addition to the rental fee for boats, for dinners, meals out, etc., supporting Hague businesses. Now we get zero out of that. This is the town that's getting revenue out of that. So if we turn away those renters, one of my renters is an author. Well, in our mission statement as the town, we want to be that artsy type community. Well, unfortunately, not a lot of authors live in Hague. This one comes up actually from Florida and has been coming up to here for 25 plus years and loves it here. So anyways, the good news is this body here, I suspect most of us are renters, represent a great revenue wealth for this town. So we have to, it's a tough issue, no doubt about it. We screen, as Cindy says, our renters very correct. That's why we don't list with Airbnb, because you lose control over who comes into your property. We call and talk to each renter individually, and that's how we do it. So it's a revenue opportunity here, but it also seems to be a penalty for the people who provide that opportunity by renting their houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes.
How you doing? I'm Jeremy Convery. Our family's been coming up here for 100.
Can you come over and speak into that mic,
Just try to
please?
speak up a little bit more.
Thank you.
So I'm Jeremy Convery. Our family's been coming here for 110 years. Originally through the YMCA, our grandparents, great-grandparents were missionaries. We didn't have a lot of money. As a kid, we actually rented from Peter Mitchell's family. We couldn't afford a full month rent. We could only stay 3 weeks. And apparently that would screw all the renters now. So for a lower class, we would not be able to rent in this area because you want to make a class difference even more than there is. You know, I'm a carpenter. You know, I make minimum, you know, honest wages. You know, I work for people that make a hell of a lot more than I do. One of our neighbors, the house came for sale, you know, property. They decided to buy it. That way they would not have New York City money come up and have the jet skis, like someone said, cruising around Oneida Bay. They bought it so they could rent it and they could control that property and make sure they have good renters. And they do. If they have a bad renter, they will not rent to them again. The last renter, they clogged the toilet. They're out. You know, it was a teenage kid that put something down, I think the toilet brush. Regardless, they're going to control the renters. Peter controls his renters. Their renters are great. I've never even heard your renters across the bay. You know, you probably hear my dog. We can almost hear each other talking. You know, we're in a small community. The money, we rent our house out. Luckily, we have a couple that rents it for 5 to 6 weeks, so we'd be covered. We have a couple of short-term rentals, like a young couple with a baby that comes up for 3 or 4 days. It'd be out. Again, it's a class thing. You know, if you can't afford a 4-week rental, you cannot come to Lake George or to Hague, and that's bullshit. Pardon my French. But you know, we need to deal with some of these issues. You know, I work in a lot of areas, Boulder, Colorado. I know a lot of regulations, and I believe in a lot of regulations. They're there for a reason. Houses need to be brought up to standards, but do it over time. Do not pull it a day or 2 before Memorial Day. I have clients that are coming up tomorrow. I had to tell them 2 days ago about this. They flipped. You know, they're trying to call lawyers. They're trying to hurt the small people, and that's all you're doing now is hurting the small people. The money we make from renting our place goes towards taxes. If we have anything left over, it goes towards our septic and a well, upkeep on the property. And that's all we're doing is trying to keep our head afloat right now. So you want to try to, you know, kick us out because, you know, we have to rent? That's bullshit. So we need to figure that out. Do not do this the day before Memorial Day weekend or 2 days before. Most of the summer people will not show up until this weekend. You know, we're slammed trying to get everyone ready. And you're going to try to do this before, what, half the population's even in town? Whose idea was it to try to sneak this in before the summer people return? I'm assuming it's a lawyer, but that's just, you know, bipartisan on some people. Sorry, I don't even know you. I'm just
Absolutely. Everything is my fault. We can have that argument.
That was very much too.
That's what I get paid for.
Yes. I don't want to take your time, but the people that are renting the properties are helping everything out. They're making the properties better. They're hardworking people. Do not hurt them. Do not just try to make us sell. Like I would hear that Peter had to sell to some, you know, New York City guy with a ton of money. It'd be awful. You know, they're great neighbors. They work hard. They're there all winter long. I was there all winter long with Peter. You know, it's nice. It's a nice community, and it's what we have is great. And what they've given us was great. You know, the 3-week rental as a kid. My parents were teachers. We couldn't afford, unfortunately, the property next to us for $12,000 at the time. Now it's what, 1.7. But you know, don't hurt the little people, and don't try to pull something over on all the summer people again. You guys have done that enough. All of our tax money goes to Ticonderoga for schools. What's the school system doing up there? They can't even produce an electrician. We have one electrician for all of Ticonderoga. the school system needs to change up there. All of our money is going towards what?
Okay, but we're kind of off track.
I hear you, but you know, figure things out. Don't try to pull another one over on us, is the point.
Well, and nobody said this was going into effect from the warrant.
Well,
Why do
sure.
you think we had a public hearing so we can discuss it?
But how convenient to do when all the summer people are here?
Well, we were hoping to just kind of move forward with it. That's the reason for the meeting.
Right,
So
the
we
school's
can get-
not even out, so most of the people can't even come here until school's out of session.
Well, you brought a good point, but again, there's a lot of people on the Zoom thing, It's
Yeah.
just,
All right,
Jeremy,
I
it's a
see that- I see that,
situation,
people, but
I don't want to.
I won't take up any more of your time.
No, but you're right, but it's a situation where, you have to take little steps, and we want to listen to people, and again, massage it, listen, take into consideration what you guys are saying, take into consideration what people up on the Zoom are doing, and again, it's not gonna start tomorrow. If it's, but again, we want your input, that's why this is all being recorded, we can go back over it, and I'm sure we'll probably have another public hearing down the road. But again, we're not here to say, you're gonna do this, we're here to listen.
Right, so next time you have a public meeting, do it when more summer people are around and more of the population is here, because right now we're probably, what, 40%?
A lot of people rent.
20? Yeah, wait until the rest of the people are here.
Good point.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Alice?
So I wasn't really going to speak, but I decided I needed to be here. So my name is Alice. My father-in-law, Bob Patchett, bought the Trout House Resort in 1971. He always said, way back then.
Alice, excuse me, could you move a little closer, because Tim said they're not picking your voice up back there, thank you.
We don't know what we're doing at the backside.
So in 1971, there were 26 tourist accommodations in Hague, New York. Now, you can count them on one hand, maybe four, maybe 5 at most. We just lost Rua Bed and Breakfast. Hague, I would like to still think it's a tourist town. It should be. And so the need for private rentals, we need them. Because we need people to come and keep the Hague market going and Sherry's place, and we need tourism. And, we're not like a Lake George Village or Bolton Landing. There's not 50 places to stay or 100 places. There's 4 or 5, that's it. Having that been said, he used to always also say, because we're a commercial establishment, the rules, the regulations, everything we have to go through with our employees. I mean, it's very difficult to run a business now with all the rules and regulations. And he used to always say that, and somebody said this tonight, it's not only the people that are renting private homes, but it's the people that have private homes that put 20 people in their home, unregulated tourism. And he was so right. And that's what we have now in Hague, New York. We can have it. I think most of the people here have been here for many moons, as I like to say it. And they're doing it because they need to help pay their taxes. I think one of the concerns, and I walk my dogs at Friends Point, so I became friendly with a gentleman that his family's been, I think on Friends Point for probably 75 years, Hal Collins. And he said to me last year, he said, Alice, it's just very sad because the dynamics of these homes in Hague has changed drastically. And what he, I think, was trying to say is, and I think what we need to stop is people that are purchasing homes as a business venture. I think that is what maybe John, I don't know. I think that's a big problem. And if they are purchasing for a business venture, then they need to be a tourist accommodation. So there are two major problems here. First of all, I think hardly any of us have seen this ordinance on private rentals. How many people have ever seen this before in their life? No one?
This ordinance? You mean a ordinance? Or
The ordinance on short-term rentals.
Like any ordinance?
No.
Oh, this one?
Well, no, these 10 pages that are documented. Before tonight.
No.
Yes,
You read it before we came.
Yeah, okay, before you read it. So,
Alice, you have a half minute. Sorry, but I did limit to 30 and you're over now, so I'm giving another half an hour.
so anyways, this is going to require a full-time person in Hague, New York, which I support 100%, because there are two major problems that I've seen. Number one is that people put too many people in these units. You're supposed to only have 2 people per bedroom. And number two, the owner is not around. We need to enforce that people need to have a contact person in town. When the neighbor calls and there's parties going on, they need a contact person to go to that house and say, you're done, get out. Those are my thoughts. And I'm thrilled that now everyone's paying an because businesses are losing. It's very hard. In the summer, we do great because we have other things, but in the fall, winter, spring, we're losing lots of business to Airbnbs and VRBOs because in the past, we pay 7%, we pay 4%, they pay nothing.
Thank you, Alice. She was so correct on that. Businesses pay their fair share, and all of these people that decide you're going to do your own rentals, that's fine, but you aren't paying the occupancy tax that Alice has to pay and turn into the county. So, you know, legitimate businesses have a right to complain about what's happening too. All right, Ginger
One
needs-
an administrative thing, so I'm Ginger.
So for the people that are on Zoom, somehow the chat got disabled. I'm not able to, I don't know what happened. But if you want to say something, just send me an email. I put that in the chat. You can read the chat, you just can't answer it. And I will open your microphone. So Seth wants to speak, so I opened his microphone. So can we take him?
Yes,
next?
absolutely, because I was going to ask you who you had on. Zoom.
Okay, and by the way, the official newspaper of the for Hague is the Post Star. Okay, so Seth.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Hi. So, yeah, first of all, I echo a lot of things that Mrs. Patchett said. And, you know, the board to me is sending 2 different messages. Steve said in the beginning, look, we're passing this because we want to keep this town a nice place to live. We want to avoid these problems. But then it's also, you need to pay your taxes. You're not paying the occupancy tax. I'll tell you what I think. And if you listen to everyone who has spoken, I think that this legislation is one, it's fear-based, okay? I live right next to one of the hotel motels, and for 3 months a year, there are people there, and every once in a while, somebody gets drunk and gets loud. And you know what? I go over and I talk to the owner, and he's a good friend of mine, and he deals with it. And life goes on. The problems are handled. I see a town that cannot even support 1 year-round business. I see a town that when the firehouse wanted to open for business, the zoning person at the time who lived nearby said, okay, but I'm not letting you have loud music. because that person didn't want to listen to it. That is affecting the 75 days that the few businesses in town have to make a living. This is a version of get off my lawn. If you listen to everyone here, through this pandemic, I bet if there was a raising of hands, a lot of people would show loss. And it's not just a loss of loved ones in life, it's a loss of jobs. And now is the time where we take a stance that's so myopic that we're going to make it harder for people to keep their homes. What I propose is that for a change, this board and this town tries to support the very few businesses that struggle to stay open. Our one store can't stay open because everyone goes to Stewart's. Our restaurant can't have live music and bring in crowds. And now we're trying to make it more expensive and more difficult for the people that have lived here for generations to try because of a fear of a crime wave. I'm a retired cop, okay? There is no crime wave. We do not have even a part-time law enforcement here. And again, if this was a proposal that said, based on the recent numbers of police calls, public nuisance, trash ordinances, everything else, then we have something to talk about. But we are using restrictive legislation in a town of, what's the year-round population? 700, that does nothing to try and keep us afloat. We are a community. I feel this community very much so. And so do a lot of people in this room and on Zoom. And so to me, and I say this with all due respect, this is an incredibly myopic proposal, because what I do with my rental, with my home, to try and make it a generational home for me, my children, to be part of this community, to not sell it to the next person. If there are issues with my tenants and I affect my neighbors, or they violate the noise ordinance, or they throw out trash, then you're damn right the town should come in and tell me to snap to and address it and fine it. But until that day comes, I am of the firm belief that it is none of the town's business unless there is a problem. And certainly I do not want them to impede my ability or my neighbor's ability to make this afloat. I would like for once to see this town embrace and try and support the few businesses to try and get this town to grow instead of to die of stagnation.
Time is up. Thank you very much. All right, Ginger, you have someone else?
Well, I can read a comment if somebody.
All right, that's fine, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I have to read it from my computer.
That's right.
And it's from Crystal Staple. And why wouldn't the SPR regulation mention that the home occupancy needs the CO occupancy for the home? Example, a 4-bedroom home could only rent to 8 people. That would help regulate the amount of people that are allowed. And now Donna Watley would like to speak. So,
Donna?
let me open her.
Okay.
Hi, thank you. As a person who's been involved in economic development in the region in the last few years, I talk a lot and hear a lot about other towns and what they do and the struggles that they have. And I can tell you that all the way around the Adirondack region, towns are looking at this legislation for a variety of different reasons, and they all have different conditions related to them. What happens in Lake Placid with their rental community is very different than what happens in our community. I want to just highlight 2 things. One, I totally am on board with everything that Seth just said, and I don't want to repeat what he said, but I just want to voice my support for that. But I also want to say that when the largest tourist accommodation establishment stands up in front of your town and says, we need additional tourist accommodations, which would be in competition with her, you know that you have an accommodation problem. We also have reduced almost every piece of commercial real estate in our downtown area to residential, or we're doing other things to impede its commercial development or commercial usage. And we really need to think about the future of our town in that respect. If these businesses can't stay afloat, then we are not going to have the tourists come to our area to have a decent time there. They're going to go someplace else because they don't have any resources whatsoever to support them while they're on vacation. And then I also want to sort of talk about the having some visibility and vision as to what we want to be as a town. We've, over the years, tried to create updated comprehensive plans to no avail. We can't even keep a committee together because we can't move that discussion along in a proper manner. We had the LA group in to work with us, and basically nothing came out of that. All of the things that we talked about went basically nowhere. We didn't finish that process. And you have to, so in light of things like that, I think you have to be really, really careful when you're talking about something like this, that about the town that you want to have and want to create. I hear people sometimes say, well, we want it to be like it always has been. And I don't know whose lifetime they're talking about, but not mine. You know, to Alice's point, we used to have 20 different accommodation establishments, public ones, in town. We had 8 places where you could buy gas. We had 3 grocery stores. We had, you know, when I was a kid, it was a lot different. We had commerce here, and it supported both the residents in the summer and it supported the tourists that came here in the summer. So I think, you know, before we decide that we're going to tax the current legacy families that are desperately trying to hold on to their homes because they have to rent them to pay their waterfront taxes. These are not rich families. They may have been generations ago, but they are not now, and they struggle to hold on to their properties. And unless you want an entire community full of, you know, rich Long Islanders who are the only people who can afford to buy these homes, you got to be really careful here about making it impossible for people to hold on to their homes. So that's what I have to say.
Appreciate that. Someone else, Ginger?
Not at the moment.
Pardon me?
Not at the moment.
Anyone else out in the audience that have anything?
Joe.
Joe.
Hi, guys. Joe Brucko. I run Justin Joe's Sport Fishing Charters. If anyone wants to go fishing. I'm going to be short, succinct here. My question is there a problem? Or are we just jumping on the proverbial bandwagon, like all small towns, like the thing to do now? Hague is unique. I know a lot of people here tonight. I know a lot of people that rent like I do sparingly. I rent 1 week a year, sometimes 2 at most. I don't want to rent more than that, and I stay there. I don't really want to rent my place out. I have to rent it. I simply can't afford to pay all the taxes and everything without renting it. Has the board considered some type of exemption for short-term rentals on a minimal, no more than 1 or 2 weeks? Just food for thought. It's just, I took a quick look at this. I didn't study it. I just became aware of this 2 or 3 days ago. And it just seems so overwritten, so complex, boilerplate. It's like, what are they doing? What are they doing? And, you know, they get a hold of that, and it's kind of the same thing. Is that really necessary in Hague? That's the question I pose. Most of the land property owners I know that rent, they really maintain their stuff really well. They deal with issues. I do a lot of vetting. I've never had a problem. I guess that's the biggest question. How many problems have we had? And, you know, if there has been a problem, how's it been dealt with? If there's an ongoing property owner that keeps rearing, you know, this problem keeps rearing its ugly head, deal with that, you know, pull that person aside and deal with that individual. But I think by and large, it's a non-issue. I could be wrong. I don't see any problems. I mean, the folks I rent are in bed at 9 o'clock at night, and they're up here to enjoy the lake. So, you know, that's really about all I have to say.
Thank you, Joe. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity.
And then this young lady right here, she's trying to get.
Okay, yes, please, stand up and come forward.
Over here. Mike's here.
Hi, my name is Ruth Goble. My family has a place on Friends Point, and as I think it was Donna mentioned, I like to term legacy families. My family, I'm the fourth generation of 5 generations of my family that's come here, even though we're not native to Hague. We've had our property since 1956. The Commons family on Friends Point, my family's been there for more than 80 years. We have changed hands with how our property was owned this past year. And so for the first time, we are renting this year to pay taxes, to put a new roof on it. I literally completely rearranged my family schedule because I learned last week that this meeting was happening. I've been coming up here because we're renting in a few weeks for the first time. I've been coming up here. This is my 5th weekend since April, like a 3-4 day weekend to get the house rented ready, like maintaining the property and doing things to go above and beyond so that for renters. And in rearranging my family schedule, I homeschool our teenage children. And so school didn't really happen much the past week because I'm doing partly dealing with this. I'm pleased to hear that a little pulling back from what the phone call that my family had last week with one of the board members, backtracking on implementing it in June, and now I'm hearing next year. So part of my rush in this past week and upending my life was we're trying to get this property ready to rent. They might implement this in June. Oh my goodness. Feeling like it was being railroaded through. And having come to Hague my entire life, when I was young, we never went to a restaurant. But renters are more likely to go to a restaurant. We rented a boat once or twice because ours didn't, motorboat because ours didn't work. We're not offering our motorboat to renters, so if they want a powerboat, they have to rent it. Bring business in. They'll probably hopefully frequent the Hague market, go up to Windchill. We have a whole binder I'm putting together of businesses and restaurants in the area for the renters to frequent and go and give money to. So I just wanted you to hear, a lot of these people have shared my thoughts already, but I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I gotta say one more thing, 30 seconds.
Nobody dealt with this, and I think this is huge. Silver Bay Association, our biggest tourist accommodation place in Silver Bay, New York. And I love Silver Bay. My dad worked for the YMCA all over the country for 40 years. The last 20 years, he worked in New York City. And so every year since I was 4 years old, we would go to Silver Bay for 2 weeks, the end of June, July, and loved it. My children, like Edna's children, went there, you know, with the woozles and the wee woozles and the chippies and the falcons. Anyways, I can't say enough wonderful things about Silver Bay. I love it. However, I understand that they, well, I'll say they hide underneath the nonprofit umbrella. But I would like this board to really get with that county, and they need to pay an accommodations tax or fee, accommodations fee. Does anyone agree with me here?
I agree. I will tell you, I checked with Michael, Swan,
Swan, yeah.
at the county, and he was ready to go after them. He could tell you how many dollars he was collecting an occupancy tax, but then when he checked into the law, there was someplace written in the law where they were not able to collect taxes from them. So it isn't something that we didn't look into.
I know you're looking into it, but I think we really, if these folks are having to pay 4%, we really need to push, and maybe John.
I wouldn't disagree with you on that.
Yeah, it would take a change in legislation. I don't disagree with you, but it would take a change in the law.
Well, maybe they'd be willing to do 2%.
And
They should.
yeah, and I think you also hit the nail on the head with the people that are buying residences, but basically running hotels. Yeah.
All right, anyone else? Oh, back by, okay, yeah.
I'm Evan Khan, I live in Silver Bay. I believe our town signs are from Hague. Our town sign has the word cabins. I agree with just about everything that everyone said here, but I got a couple of questions for the board. One, would you consider grandfathering current residents that have properties, deeded properties, going forward, maybe as a percentage of their income versus their taxes? Two, if this does happen, would you consider reassessing properties that we're based? I have 3 structures on my property, 2 cabins and a house. If one of those cabins becomes non-existent because I can't rent it, I'm looking at tearing it down or moving to someone else who could do something. And I was assessed based on the fact of the number of structures I had. Like I said, I echo what everyone says. I don't want to repeat it, although it bears repeating. But I do need to say to the board, the way this was written was offensive to a lot of people. Just in the beginning, as you read further, it became fairer, but everyone's going to get an initial impression, and that hurt.
Mr. Sylvester, can you answer that at all about the grandfathering that he's talking about?
Yeah, I mean, well, that is something. I mean, I think there's a bigger problem here under the zoning ordinance, and that's why I was asking people about their zoning districts. And what I'm hearing is that a lot of people may be running rental properties that illegally, not in accordance with the area where they're zoned, but it's been going on for so long and nobody's questioned it. So you people are bringing a lot of things to the surface here that are going to need to be dealt with in this ordinance suggestion on an alternative. I think the objective is to reach what Alice was talking about, is people that buy a single family residence, but they're buying it and running it like a hotel or a motel, not a single family residence. And that's the issue. And what I'm hearing here is that this ordinance is not just targeting that type of excessive use, but is also targeting the very type of use that the zoning ordinance was meant to promote and allow for the very reasons you're talking about. So yeah, this needs to be looked at almost on a property by property basis, case by case basis, and a discussion of whether or not something is grandfathered in or an illegal use that has been going on for so long and nobody's done anything about it. Those are all issues that are going to have to be dealt with.
That I agree with, but like others, illegal use also needs to be looked at. People are saying on that.
Yeah.
So I mean, we have to relate to number one, is just about everybody here.
Yeah, and there may be people that think they're entitled to be grandfathered in, but the use has been illegal, so, yeah, yeah.
I saw one other person I thought over in this area, yes.
I just have to ask, Mrs. Silvestri, what the legal use are you doing?
Oh, yeah, but I'm speaking in theory and concept only. I'm not thinking.
So it's not based on the fact.
I don't know, but what I'm hearing is that there are people that may be renting out guest cottages. Okay, if you want, let's just use for example. Let's say you're in the TR1 district.
Yes, I am.
I was hypothetical. I'll pick a different business. I'll pick HR1 then. I didn't mean you. I meant, I'm saying just so I wasn't thinking of you specifically. So as of right, a one-family dwelling can be rented out. Okay, but then you look back at the definitions. One-family dwellings for rent or hire, it includes one-family dwellings, mobile homes, but not guest cottages. Somebody's been renting out a guest cottage in the HR1, that has been an illegal use. Now, I'm not aware of anybody that's doing that, but I'm saying if that's going on, that would be somebody that, no, you can't be grandfathered in because you weren't supposed to be doing it in the first place.
Right. Yes, go ahead, Gallagher.
I guess I just had a question on that.
Your name, please?
Rachel Chelsea, just in terms of the zoning, is that zoning deemed by the APA? And when would the zoning take place? Because isn't all of that zoning would be after 1973 when the health ordinance?
Yeah, no, and that's a good point. Yes, if you had a pre-existing use that predated the zoning ordinance, that is something that would be grandfathered in.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't make something that was legal at the time illegal by legislation.
Right. So if anyone had cabins, multiple cabins prior.
But that's why I'm saying that's why I said that could be potentially, it depends. If that guest cottage was built after the zoning ordinance and then rented out, no, that couldn't be grandfathered in. If it existed pre-zoning, pre-APA, yeah, then that's the definition of grandfather.
Someone else? Yes. Have you spoken before? John, so you've already spoken, John. I'd like to make sure that there's someone who wants to
I want to
say.
read something from the staff.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so this is from the Gallo family. I agree with all the sentiments that have been stated so far. This ordinance is too much oversight and management for people who already are truly good stewards of the lake and their homes. We have been renting our homes for years with great groups of repeat renters and have always been able to manage our renters directly without issue. As a few have historically mentioned, can the board speak to the genesis of this ordinance? Are there truly many complaints that the town has to field in the summer, renter or owner related? And specifically, what do we think the complaint process would look like? And then I want to register to speak myself.
Was there anybody else back there before you, Ginger? Because I can't see back there. No, we're just made note of all of them and we'll try to get back at a later date.
And I think Tom.
Oh, Tom? Oh, I'm sorry.
Tom Haskell. In front of the room, please.
Yeah, right here.
I love it. Tom Haskell, I own some property up on there, and unfortunately, we had to sell our house last year. We used to rent all the time, and all the years we rented, we maybe had one or two bad families, but we were always there. And I think most of the people here that rent their houses in the town of Hague are there. It's not, basically what I want to say is, I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said, but basically what you do is you take the 10 pages, you narrow it down to 2 pages, you register as a house that's rented, that you have rentals. And you register, the town takes them, you send them down to the county, they pay their 4% tax, and it's over and done with. All this other stuff in there is overkill. It's a lot of overkill for maybe and I'm going by what I heard through the grapevine, that certain people have called other certain people and they're complaining, and this is how this all came about. So I'm just telling you, scrap 8 pages, make it 2 pages, and it should go through with flying color. And let people, you know, people aren't getting rich. They're just paying and trying to live here and stay here, you know? And luckily my taxes are cut in half, and you know, we all have to split that. So we can actually do that now.
Tom, I get paid by the page. You're cutting into my income here.
I'll make up the difference for you. So that's it.
All right, Ginger, I'll take you next. Okay. They couldn't hear me, I'm so sorry. I had to come up.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so I wasn't gonna speak. I don't really have strong feelings either way, but I'm a former board member and now I'm sitting on the other side of the table. So I just wanted to make a suggestion because I know that the board works really hard and there are some people in town that are doing a lot of work. And I think it's great that everybody came out tonight and it's great to hear all this comment. I wish we could have this dialogue more often. And so what I was thinking, I'm going to suggest this to the town board, that maybe you want to put together a citizen committee that has, this is working really well with some other issues that the town is facing. And you have people from the town board as well as a few people representing different interests in the town. Because I've heard people say we're a community, and we are, but I don't really feel like we are, because really nobody comes to town board meetings. You know, it has to be an explosive issue to get people out. So I would really like people to be more participatory. And you know, the question I would have of everybody is, how do you want the town to communicate with you? Because I hear all the time, we don't know about this, the town's doing this without us knowing. You know, we put it in the Chronicle. You know, I don't know how else to communicate with people, and I think that's a problem for the town, right? I mean, Steve has his email list.
Steve does a great email.
He does, but not everybody's on it. So
They need to get their email address on, but it's incredible what I get from him.
exactly, if you're on Steve's email list, it's great. But I think that's another thing. We need to think about how the town, because the town can put things on the website, but unless you know and go there and check it all the time. So there are a lot of issues that we could address to bring this community closer together, to talk about things before they become an explosive issue. And that's what I would
Thank
vote
you.
for.
I appreciate your input. The committee idea is a good idea. Unless we have somebody that's has something different to say. All right, I think it's the last one that we're going to wrap up. Lucky dog. There you go.
All right, so a lot of the things
Okay,
I
name.
wrote down. Hi, I'm Sandy Smith. I live in Slacks Bay. A lot of the things, questions and stuff, everybody covered. I just have to say that first statement was, my thing is, I want to know who will be implementing and enforcing the ordinance, right? I would like to know who is inspecting my home, and I want notice way before they're coming. Now, you will be notified 24 hours, because if I'm not there, and a lot of times I'm not, I go home, I have a doctor appointment, I don't live that far away. So I have a life too that I go to. I want to know more than 24 hours. I need a time. All right. Renters actually have to get like sometimes something like that, at least a 48 or a 2-week notice. I think I should be able to have that as well. I would also like to know who the implementing, enforcing, who's recording and documenting all this information, who's paying, is that what the $300 is for? Is that going to pay for these 3 new positions that are going to be created? Because you got to have an inspector, you got to have an enforcer, because if they break the rules, I mean, am I going to come to is the man going to come to his house and go, your renter did this, and slap him with some kind of fine? I want to know exactly what it is, and I want it in writing. Okay. All right, and I want the names in writing. I don't want to say, well, there'll be someone eventually. No, I want to know who, because I don't like strangers in my home, and I'm not telling a renter a stranger's coming to my home, and I'm not going to post that statement that tells them that basically they're a lowlife and can't be trusted. And I'm gonna put it there and have them look at it and go, I'm coming to this town and they think that I am a public health and safety issue. Yeah, come in my door, it has to be right in there within 5 feet. And this, that, and the other thing, that's a real welcoming note right inside my door, rather than the beautiful thing I have on my refrigerator and says, thank you for coming to, my renters come for years. Thank you for coming to my home. So I walk them in, I walk them through, I tell them everything's still the same. And the other last thing, I swear to I'll make this short. Why is the time now 11 to 7? Hasn't it always been 10 to 8? Is that only for renter times for the quiet hours? I always thought it was 10 to 8. Construction couldn't start till 8. Is it now going to change to 7? It's in there. The quiet hours now are.
Quiet time. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Quiet time?
Well, 7 a.m., I'm sorry, I don't want construction going on, please keep it to 8 o'clock. Because if you make it quiet time, you know, you can't just do it for renters. The other people are gonna be like, well, we want our time to start at 7 too.
Okay,
Right?
thank you.
May I comment on that before you go?
Yeah.
We start at 7 because you guys get your residents in, we have to start earlier to beat the traffic. Once it hits 8 o'clock, we can't roll our trucks in and out. You've seen us numerous times in Silver Bay. You've seen us numerous times on secondary roads. It's a real priority for us to get up there as early as possible without disturbing people. We try to give notice. I talk to community people, I send out emails, we work along with Silver Bay, and I keep the board informed on this. That's the only answer I can give you on that, and we have to be before.
Are you talking highway?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not talking highway, I'm talking about. I think.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Well, I would like to thank you all for coming. I would like your comments. We've all made notes and we can go back and check these out. And we will get back to you at some point. I do like seniors, I do the committee because that does work on other groups that we've been doing. So at this point, I would like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I just mentioned one thing. I thank you all for coming, and we have received emails from a number of people who are not here tonight, and we appreciate those too. And to Ginger's point, we need the communication to come in. So one of the things we're trying to do too is set up Zoom, and we appreciate your patience as we have been working on that. So thank you, Zoom attendees, for attending tonight, and thank Tim Fiallo, thank you so much. Ginger, thank you for facilitating this. We really appreciate you. And I'm going to thank Nancy Young too for sitting in and helping us tonight in Melissa's absence. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you for those kind words, everyone, Jack. We appreciate it. So we have a motion. I need a second to the motion to close the public hearing.
Almost.
Who made the first? I thought that was Jack. Did you make the first?
Jack did.
Jack did. So I have to have a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor? And now I need a motion to close the regular meeting. We made a motion, a second, Jack. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everybody.
Yep.
John?
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
John, a forest right.